You are not moving slowly because you lack resources. You are moving slowly because you're trying to use 1990s model to navigate a 2026 opportunity. Right now, Latin America's capital markets are on a trajectory to nearly triple from 2.4 trillion in 2024 to 6.3 trillion by 2035, according to Morgan Stanley's 2026 economic outlook. That is not a niche market. That is the next arena. And the executives who are already positioned inside of it, culturally, linguistically, operationally, are not grinding through language courses or waiting on consultants. They used a compressed timeline. They acquired leverage that most of their competitors still do not believe is possible. The traditional model for global expansion tells you to expect 2 to 5 years of friction. No. 6-figure consulting fees and a slow, painful process of learning your way into a new market. The new model collapses that into months. Not through shortcuts, through architecture. I'm going to show you exactly how that compression works. And by the end of this video, you will understand precisely why the executive who is still approaching global transition the traditional way is not just falling behind. They're leaving 8 figures on the table while they do it. Let me first name what is actually happening when an executive tries to enter a Spanish-speaking market through traditional channels. Because most leaders dramatically underestimate the gap between where they are and where they need to be. This is not a language problem. Language is a symptom. The real gap is architectural. It is the gap between your current identity, your current trust infrastructure, and your current operational cadence. And what the market you are entering requires is all three. When you walk into a room in Mexico City, Bogota, or Sao Paulo, without that architecture in place, you are not just a foreigner. You are a foreigner who does not know they are a foreigner. You are in a high-stakes deal environment that costs you money before a single contract is signed. The language barrier alone carries a measurable price tag. Companies operating across global markets with inadequate linguistic infrastructure lose between 7 and 10 million euros annually due to project delays, misunderstood contracts, and failed negotiations. Documented across European market studies with analogs that map directly onto Latin America entry contexts. That figure does not capture the opportunity cost of deals that never start because the trust signal was not there from the first conversation. Then there's a cultural intelligence gap. I would argue that one is more important because if you don't understand the language, you can't speak the language, but you understand the culture, you can win with that, but not vice versa. A 2014 Harvard Business Review analysis, still the most cited study on the subject, found that 70% of international ventures fail, primarily because of cultural misalignment. Not market size, not pricing, not product fit. Cultural misalignment. And culture is not something you learn in a weekend. A weekend workshop. It is something you install through repeated, structured immersion over time. Not 5 years, but time. The traditional approach says hire local, build a team on the ground, attend trade conferences, spend 12 to 18 months observing. Who has that time? Learn the protocols gradually, adapt your pitch over time. Brother, that is 2 to 5 years. That is always the approach of every executive who is behind. Here is the thesis. The pace of global transition is no longer determined by how quickly a human being can absorb a new cultural environment through natural exposure. It is determined by the quality of the system you build around yourself to accelerate that absorption and to run the operational infrastructure of your transition in the background while you do the high-value work. That is non-linear leverage, and it has 4 mechanics. Mechanic number 1, AI compressed market intelligence. Traditional market entry research follows a linear path. You hire a consultant, they interview stakeholders, they write a report, you read it, you develop a thesis, you test the thesis, you adjust. That cycle, at minimum, takes 6 to 9 months for a complex market entry at the executive level. AI-driven market intelligence compresses the front end of this cycle dramatically. According to reporting from Maxcelerator and Phrases 2025 Global Expansion Analysis, mid-market companies leveraging AI tools for the international expansion are entering new markets up to 3 times faster while reducing market entry costs by up to 60%. The mechanism is not magic. It is the processing power applied to data that would take a human team months to compile and synthesize. For an executive entering the Spanish-speaking market, this means competitor mapping, cultural sentiment analysis, stakeholder identification, and regulatory landscape synthesis can be completed in weeks rather than months. That is not a feature. That is a structural advantage. The executive who starts with that foundation is already operating 3 to 6 months ahead of the one who started at the same time using the traditional model. I'm so tired of tradition. When are we just going to be visionaries? When are we just going to step out into the unknown? What got you here is not going to take you there. You can use AI to research a market. There's whole systems for this, my friend. You cannot use AI to become the version of yourself that belongs in the market. There's 2 sides of this coin. That work is different. That work is architectural. And it has to happen before the first conversation, not during it. Identity architecture means who are you in this room? What is your value signal in a culture that reads authority through different markers than the one you are built in, than the one you built it in? How does your presence land when the relational infrastructure you have spent decades building does not translate yet? Most executives who enter a new market without answering these questions first walk into rooms already at a deficit. Not because they are not powerful, but because they're broadcasting power on the wrong frequency. They're running the wrong operating system in the wrong room. Well, the right room, wrong system. The Global Authority Protocol installs this infrastructure through a structured high intensity. Let's just say that it's going to make you very uncomfortable. You understand that. High intensity immersion process that runs alongside, not instead of, the executive's existing work. The timeline is months, not years, because the architecture is deliberate and sequenced, not casual and accumulated. Mechanic number 3. AI-backed operational infrastructure. Here is what is costing the executive who is attempting global transition through traditional means the most: their time. Every hour they spend on translation logistics, scheduling across time zones, cultural navigation questions, content localization, and operational coordination is an hour not spent on high leveraging activity that justifies their presence in the market in the first place. The protocol builds AI systems that handle this operational layer. If AI can do it, why are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense. AI is cheaper than you, and it's cheaper than anyone you can hire. Not assistants, systems. Automated workflows that process multilingual communication, produce culturally calibrated content, manage the rhythms of this relationship in a new market, and report back in a format that the executive can act on without becoming an operator. Stanford University's 2025 AI Index report documents that corporate AI investment reached $252.3 billion in 2024, a 44.5% increase from the prior year. When iPhone came out and people were calling it toys, they had 7 years to adjust. Some of them are still adjusting and behind by decades almost at this point. AI's integration, we could name, this is the iPhone, and this is the time you had. This is AI. We do not have time not to unlearn and relearn, folks. We don't have time to be stubborn. We don't have time to fear learning a new thing. No. That investment is not being made because AI is interesting. It is interesting. But it's being made because the executives who have deployed AI infrastructure are operating at a different velocity than those who have not. Why would we not use the tools? Global transition is one of the highest leveraged deployment contexts for this infrastructure. And most executives are attempting to do it manually. Mechanic number 4. Compressed linguistic fluency. Our brains are meant to learn languages and to be culturally embodied into different contexts. Everyone knows somebody that knows 3 languages. Why can't you be one of those people? What's wrong with your brain? Is your brain broken? It is not. This is the identity, but we're not talking about that. Let's just talk about mechanic number 4, compressed linguistic fluency. Linguistic fluency is not an optional nice to have. We are global now. We have been globalized. You must speak. Let's just continue with the point. I got excited. Language is a trust signal. When an executive walks in the room and can engage, not through his translator, but him can engage, not perfectly. Who's asking you to be perfect? There's not a single man or woman on this planet that can ask that, because they are not that. But authentically, using that fortunate fingerprint, the one of one, only you have this, authentically. In the language of the market, they're entering, the dynamic shifts. The room opens in a way it does not for the executive who relies entirely on interpretation. I wouldn't even trust my mother that much. I love you, Mom. The traditional path the traditional path, where are we at here? Okay, the traditional path to conversational business fluency in Spanish takes 2 to 3 years of consistent study. The compressed path, structured immersive acquisition paired with AI tools that provide real-time feedback in cultural context. Please don't forget about cultural context. Can bring a committed executive to functional business fluency in 4 to 6 months. The global AI-powered localization market was valued at $5 billion in 2025 and is projected to grow at 25% compound annual growth rate through 2023. According to the industry analysis compiled by NIMD's 2025 Language Technology Radar Report. That growth is driven by the demand for exactly this kind of compressed, high-context linguistic capability. For the executive entering a Spanish-speaking market, fluency is not about becoming a native speaker. It is about acquiring enough cultural and linguistic intelligence to operate as a peer, not a visitor, not even a businessman, just a peer. A peer. That threshold is achievable in a fraction of the time the traditional model would suggest with the right system. Let me put all four mechanics together and show you what the asymmetry looks like. Executive A uses the traditional approach. They hire consultants, attend conferences, study the market at a distance. You have to get in it. You have to get your hands dirty. Build relationships slowly over time and gradually develop the cultural and linguistic intelligence to operate effectively. Their timeline, 2 to 5 years. Their cost, high 6 figures to low 7 figures in consulting, travel, operational friction, and time. We didn't mention the emotional cost of all of this. And this is all before their first major deal closes. This is the linear path. And Benjamin Hardy would be so disappointed. Thank you, Benjamin. Executive B enters the Global Authority Protocol. In the first 30 days, they have a fully mapped competitive landscape, a calibrated identity architecture for the Spanish-speaking rooms. You are becoming Spanish. You are embodying what it is to be, because that is what we are able to do. Us grown-ups, we've really lost it. And I'm going to help you regain it. Who's to say that you can't add a little bit of depth to who you are? You're supposed to. You're supposed to. If the tree never stops growing, why would we stop growing? You're smarter than an oak. I'm confident in that. They have a fully mapped competitive landscape, a calibrated identity architecture for the Spanish-speaking rooms. You become Spanish. You don't just speak Spanish. You don't just observe a culture. You become. It is you. This is why patriotism is such a dangerous game to adhere to. Because once you've put yourself in a box, now you're like, oh, I can't even, no, that box doesn't go with, it just, this is another conversation. Let's stay focused. You limit yourself. That's all I'm going to say. If you think, and if you trace it back to the root of things, we all come from the same place. Now we've branched out into amazingly beautiful, wonderful cultures, languages. This is the tapestry of life. This is the contrast that allows us to observe the beauty. But if you're identifying too much with, let's say, being American, being Chinese, being Japanese, being Nigerian, if you're identifying too heavily, you're going to prevent yourself from expanding. So be singular if you'd like to, but that's not what the times are calling for anymore. And on top of the calibrated identity architecture, because everything stems from who you are, that's why you do what you do, they have an AI operational infrastructure running in the background. You've been audited. You tried to escape AI, but we figured it out. We did it for you. It's all good. That handles the administrative and logistical layer of their transition. By month 4, they're in rooms that Executive A will not be in for another 18 months. This is the biggest competitive, because there's no competition. You be so great that you separate yourself from competition. This is what most executives are not going to do. Congratulations for being in the right place at the right time. By month 4, they're in rooms that Executive A will not be in for another 18 months, maybe. And when they are, they're recognized as a peer, not assessed as an outsider. The OECD's 2025 Latin America Economic Outlook documents that the region's aggregate GDP is on a sustained growth trajectory, with capital flows from the United States representing approximately 38% of total foreign investment in 2024. That room is filling up. I hope you get in before it's overflowed. The question is whether the executive reads this moment as a future consideration or a present opportunity. That the compressed timeline is not a shortcut. It is a correctly designed system. Consider what the transition actually requires at the executive level. You're not entering a new market as a brand. You're entering as a person. The deals that move at this level are relational. They are built on a specific kind of trust that takes root in cultural fluency, shared frames of reference, and an identity that signals belonging. The executive who deploys nonlinear leverage enters the transition already holding 3 things that traditionally would take years to build. First, they know the architecture of the room before they walk into it. They know the cultural protocols, the unspoken hierarchies, the relational cadences that govern trust in specific markets they're entering. Not from theory, from structured, AI-assisted immersion that front loads the cultural intelligence acquisition. Second, they're not spending their cognitive bandwidth on operational friction. Their AI systems are handling the transition layer, the content calibration, the scheduling, and the communication logistics. They arrive in every conversation fully present, not managing the mechanics of operating across a language gap. Third, their identity in the new room is intentional, not improvised. And you're not acting, you're just being because you became. I love this. The combination of these 3 elements is what makes the timeline compression possible. Oh, skipped a line. Not improvised. They know what they represent, how they want to land, and how to adjust in real time when the room requires. This is not a soft skill. I'm tired of that word. This is a design capability. I hope you don't miss out. That will really suck. The combination of these 3 elements is what makes the timeline compression possible. And it is what makes it hold. The executive who enters with all 3 in place does not need to spend 2 years earning credibility. They carry it with them. Morgan Stanley's bullish 2026 Latin America outlook projects that the region's capital markets alone could reach $6.3 trillion by 2035. For the executive who positions correctly inside this market by 2026 versus, well, we're in mid-2026, so you get it, by 2027. Or in actively right now, 2026, the presence is the opportunity. Versus 2030, the compounding difference is relationships, equity, and market position The compounding difference in relationships, equity, and market position is not incremental. It's generational. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Please walk away with it. The pace of your global transition is not determined by how smart you are or how well resourced your organization is. It is determined by whether you're operating with a system designed for the compression that is now possible, or whether you're working inside a model that was designed for a slower era, for times that no longer exist. Non-linear leverage is not a concept. It is an architecture. It is the deliberate sequencing of market intelligence, identity installation, not identity erasing. We're not erasing who you already are. We're adding depth to your character because we can do that. We're the greatest invention on this planet. You, me, we. we, yes. Okay. Operational AI infrastructure and linguistic fluency acquisition. These are just simple systems, my friend. In the right order, first things first. At the right intensity. With the right support structure. So that a transition that would have otherwise taken 5 years takes 5 months. The Spanish-speaking market is not waiting. Morgan Stanley puts the growth trajectory clearly. The OECD documents where the capital is flowing. The executives who are already inside the room are not there because they moved faster by grinding harder. They are there because they built a system that moved them faster by design. If what I have walked you through today maps onto the transition you are currently navigating, if you are looking at the Spanish-speaking market and recognizing that there's a gap between where you are and where you need to be is real, and that the traditional path is closing, and the traditional path to closing is too slow, the global authority protocol may be relevant to your next move. I work with a small number of executives at a time. The work is precise, high stakes, and designed for leaders who are already operating at a significant level and who recognize that the next move requires a different kind of infrastructure than what got them here. The conversation starts with a qualifying call where I determine whether your situation is one the protocol can actually move. I'm not selling you a program. I am evaluating whether your transition is one I can architect. If this is you, if that is where you are, you know how to reach me because it'll be in the description. Thank you for your time. I hope that you recognize the times that we're in because they're moving fast. Keep it organic. I love y'all.